Today on Upfront, my in-depth interview with Democratic candidate for Attorney General Susan Happ. The motorcycle-riding district attorney cruised to victory in Tuesday's primary. How does she plan to win in November? And why does her portrayal as a Harley-loving mom even matter? I'll ask her next on Upfront. Then, the candidates for governor are raising millions. But how do they spend all that money? Investigative reporter Bill Leaders has the breakdown on the campaign cash.
Covering the issues important to Wisconsin. This is Upfront with Mike Goucher.
Hello again, everyone, and welcome to Upfront. A national political pundit recently called Jefferson County District Attorney Susan Happ a rising star in Wisconsin Democratic politics. Happ confirmed that Tuesday with a decisive win in the three-way Democratic primary, besting second-place finisher, State Representative John Richards of Milwaukee, by more than 54,000 votes. Happ now advances to November in a race against the Republican candidate, Waukesha County District Attorney Brad Schimel. Happ's first campaign ad portrayed her as a motorcycle-riding, tough-on-crime prosecutor. So what propelled her to victory on Tuesday, and can she do it again in November? We're asking Susan Happ, the Jefferson County DA, who joins us now on Upfront. It's good to have you back on the program.
Thank you.
Well, I was looking at the results on Tuesday night, and as you know, there's a lot of speculation that John Richards got in the race early and worked it really hard, that Ismail Ozan came from a very heavily Democratic county, Dane County. He had some certain loyalties for his positions on Act 10, and yet you won by a big margin. Why do you think that was?
Well, we worked really hard, obviously, but I think the biggest thing that we did is we traveled around the state. You know, we talked to voters about the issues. We talked to voters about the divisiveness that we've seen in our state, you know, the fact that we've got friends and family and neighbors who can't have conversations about the issues that really matter. And as we traveled around the state, we learned that that really mattered to people. And so I do have this demonstrated record of earning votes, not just from my Democratic base, but independents and Republicans. And I think people found that refreshing, that I could earn votes across the aisle, that I was willing to work with people across the aisle. And we really just talked about protecting our rights, you know, whether it was the right to marry, the right to vote, the right to make our own health care decisions. And that was something that people throughout the state really cared about. They're tired of the bickering and the partisan politics. And I think I came as a refreshing candidate who is different in that respect.
So the theme of your campaign will be protecting Wisconsin rights. Is that what I'm hearing?
It's a lot of what we've talked about, yeah. I think the voters really want their next Attorney General to focus on protecting rights, also protecting our environment, protecting our consumers. So I would say a lot of the discussions that we've had is about protecting, protecting our communities and our children. The Attorney General, of course, is often billed as the top cop, but they're the top law enforcement officer for the state, and public protection is the #1 priority. But of course, protecting people's rights is certainly very important to the voters, and we learned that, and I think the results that you just referred to substantiate that.
When you talk about protecting people's rights, that assumes means, and you've talked about this during the primary, that you wouldn't defend certain laws in the state of Wisconsin, whether it's voter ID, whether it's a same-sex marriage ban. Is that correct?
It's correct. And, there's been some discussion or, attempt to shift that into, well, Susan's going to only enforce the laws that she agrees with. That's not accurate.
Why is that not accurate?
Right.
Yeah.
You have to start with the Constitution. So the great example would be the ban on same-sex marriage. Certainly voters voted to amend our Constitution to state that marriage is between a man and a woman. But you still have to comply with the United States Constitution. And as the judge in that case noted, you don't get to do an end run around the federal Constitution. So there is a fundamental liberty interest in people being allowed to marry who they love, and we don't get to discriminate against a class of people based on their sexual orientation. And something the judge pointed out that I agree with absolutely is that in the 50s and 60s, if we had put to the voters of Wisconsin whether they want to continue with segregation, they probably overwhelmingly would have voted to do so, but that would not have comported with the United States Constitution. So you can't do an end run around even with the voters by amending the Constitution if it does not satisfy the requirements of the Equal Protection Clause of the United States Constitution.
What about voter ID, though, where you've had certain rulings, for example, in the state of Indiana that have upheld voter ID laws?
Sure.
Why would you not defend this state's law, which ultimately may come down to looking pretty darn similar to what they did in Indiana?
It's actually not. We are the only state in the entire country that requires a governmental issued ID. So our Constitution...
But if it's tweaked, as the state Supreme Court has suggested.
Well, and we're not at that point yet, but Wisconsin, we have a 4th requirements that is not in our Constitution, which requires this governmental issued ID. And, you know, we're the only state that does that. Other states that you're alluding to have allowed for an affidavit process, for example. And our governmental issued ID requirement isn't about actually establishing your ID. It's not about establishing your qualifications to vote. It's about requiring a specific governmental issued ID. And so it is the most restrictive in the country. And look, the way that this has been put forth in terms of why we have voter ID is to prevent voter impersonation fraud, and yet they haven't been able to put forth a single case of voter impersonation fraud. And so we just want to make sure that everyone who is entitled to vote has an ability to vote, and that we're not putting impediments and obstacles in the way of people who want to vote. This voter ID law is going to disenfranchise up to 300,000 voters. Something like 23% of voters over the age of 65 don't have this governmental issued ID. And then, of course, there is the other part of it, which is the cost, the inconvenience, you know, and the expense of having to obtain these governmental issued IDs.
You mentioned the role of Attorney General in terms of the environmental domain, and I want to get your take on that because we have some very big environmental issues in this state. We have plans for a new, a very large mine in northwestern Wisconsin. As you know, there's a lot of discussion in communities around the state about sand mining and about some of the environmental consequences of that. How do you perceive the role you will play in the environmental arena should you be elected?
Well, you know, within the Department of Justice, of course, there is the Environmental Protection Unit, and it is within the purview of the Attorney General, certainly to vigorously enforce our environmental laws, and I think
you think we've been doing that?
I think that we can do more. Certainly, you know, as I've traveled on the state, even in the metropolitan areas like Madison, Milwaukee, it is a topic that comes up time and time again. And the bottom line is, you know, we as citizens want to be able to breathe clean air and drink clean water, and we don't want to worry about mercury emissions and silica dust. And look, you can have a balance between creating jobs and having economic growth, but we need to let the local officials and the citizens themselves determine whether the economic benefit is outweighed by the potential environmental harm. And I don't think they're mutually exclusive. I think you can create jobs, you can have economic benefit without necessarily harming the air and the water that we clean.
I want to ask you about a completely different topic, heroin.
Okay.
Because, you know, I've been at conferences, you've been at conferences where we talk about the heroin epidemic in the state of Wisconsin. I hear an awful lot of talk about what's being done. What's not being done from your perspective that the Attorney General can do to address what is a serious problem in many parts of Wisconsin?
Well, you know, coming from a rural county where we often have fewer resources, maybe less experience, and unfortunately Jefferson County actually has more experience as of late dealing with this heroin epidemic. But there are a lot of counties who maybe don't have the resources and the experience, and they're just, you know, catching up and realizing this epidemic is in their homes and in their communities. And so I think the Department of Justice has done a good job. We can do more in terms of bringing the information to the people. So, for example, in Jefferson County, I was a founding member of our heroin task force, and we presented and provided a summit to local citizens to attend, and we involved all of the key players, everyone from the pain management clinics to the Department of Corrections, Human Services, the Drug Task Force, law enforcement, and also, you know, a mother who had lost her 17-year-old daughter to a heroin overdose. And it was so powerful for some of these people who for a long time have probably said, this isn't my problem. I don't know anyone who's a heroin addict. I don't know anyone who's drug addicted. You know, bringing the information to the people, I think, is really important, because then they can realize that it's affecting all of us, from increased property crimes to the loss of people in the workplace, because if they're heroin addicted, they're obviously not working, to the loss of life, and then understanding that even as taxpayers, we're paying for children who are placed out of home because their parents are opiate addicted. And I think that's a great place to start with the Department of Justice. They've had a lot of information that they've been providing to law enforcement, but really getting more hands-on and getting that information directly into especially these smaller communities is going to be really important.
We're talking with the Democratic candidate for Attorney General in the state of Wisconsin, the Jefferson County DA, Susan Happ. When we come back, we'll talk about drunk driving in Wisconsin and other issues. Back in just a moment.
Up Front with Mike Goucher, brought to you by American Transmission Company.